into our first farmer panel. So I'd like to invite Anne Kirk, who will be moderating this one. Anne is on the MOA board and has a small organic farm near Sanford. She also works as the cereal crop specialist for Manitoba Agriculture. Our farmers are Kevin Nihol, Jonah Langelotz, Joseph Gardiner and Brooks White, who will be telling us more about their farms and how they're using cover crops in their management.
Okay, so for the first cover cropping panel, we have farmers representing 3 farms. We'll start with a presentation from each farmer about their operation and how they use cover crops, and then I will be asking the panel some questions, and then we'll end with questions from the audience. So first I'd like to call up Kevin and Jonah. They farm about 2,300 acres in the Red River Valley, a few miles north of Altona. They seeded their first field of tillage radish in 2015 after wheat, and have now grown cover crops on about 2/3 of their acres for the past 2 years.
So we'll let Jonah take care of the auto steer here. Can't get our PowerPoint to work. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. So then when I get to parts that said, and it looked like this, then I'll have to modify it. Well, I would like to say right off the bat that I don't consider myself to have enough knowledge on any subject to be giving a presentation, let alone be on a panel, but maybe sometimes it's important to hear from the rookies too. So we're what I guess you'd call non-organic, somewhat unconventional farmers. We're trying very hard to reduce our hours on the sprayer and increase them on the seeder. As Anne said, we farm here north of Altona, closer to the village of Rosenfeld. So Rosenfeld is located right on Highway 14, and our farm extends no further than 1.5 miles south and 1.5 miles north of that highway, and no further than 1 mile east and 4 miles west. So this is an important distinction of our farm, because not only does it afford us to have the convenience of farming close to home, it also gives the rest of the world the opportunity to drive by and see exactly what we're doing on almost half of our land. So you can imagine our trepidation when trying something new everybody gets to see. Our soils are heavy clay and clay loam. The land is flat, and in the last 30 years, wet soils and surface drainage issues have been more the rule than the exception. The last 3 years, up until last month, notwithstanding. It has traditionally been and continues to be a heavy tillage and high crop inputs area, but we're attempting to buck those trends. Throughout our history, we've grown a wide assortment of crops, including sugar beets and corn and other row crops, but in more recent years have settled on a 3-year rotation of spring wheat, canola, and soybeans, a rotation that we are hoping to expand to create more diversity. And we do dabble in a few others. We have no livestock other than our underground herd of soil organisms and some yard-bound pigs and chickens for our own use. May they digest in peace. So I grew up on our family farm, and after getting my ag degree in 1989, started farming with my dad in earnest, right on the heels of the '88 drought. In those years, seeing fields blowing with dust was commonplace, something my dad and I despised. So this was always a huge consideration whenever we did a field operation of any sort. How vulnerable are we making the soil? So soil care and protection have been a long-held value for me, but until I discovered the soil health movement a few years ago, the only tools I knew to manage that realm were crop rotation and reduced tillage. How exciting it's been to have this whole world of soil biology nurture open up and to add other tools to the kit, including cover crops. So on the topic of cover crops specifically, as Anne said, in 2015, after wheat harvest and 1.5 inches of rain, we seeded our first field of tillage radish at the end of August with our John Deere 1830 hoe drill, our main seeding tool. This is what they looked like at the end of September. So we got a nice catch, and things were looking really quite good. And then I had a picture of, this is what they looked like a month later, and it was a picture of a guy holding big massive radish, which of course wasn't true. We got decent carrots out of them, which we were happy with. 2016 was an incredibly wet year for us throughout the growing season. We thought it would be great to get clover going in a canola field during the growing season so that the clover could take root and get a head start, and then once the canola was harvested, the clover could take off and flourish. That year we were getting rain like every other day, it seemed. So at the tail end of harvest, or at the tail end of bloom, we flew on this radish clover mix, and by the time we came to harvest, even though we had lots of rain up until that point, there was no clover to be seen anywhere, probably due to lack of light. That fall was generally too wet to do much of anything else. We tried spreading some radish, and we put peas in a spinner spreader and did a light deep till and harrowing, and we got a decent stand, but nothing compared to what our seeder gave us the year before. 2017 was dry and we did nothing. In 2018 we tried the clover thing again in canola, only this time we did it earlier, after herbicide and prior to ground cover and bolting, and we actually got some rain and got a nice catch of clover, but then it turned dry and hot and there was no clover to be seen again. That fall we were fortunate to get a rain again, and that's always the thing when you're going into fall and the ground is dry and it's hard and you think, well, is there going to be any point to doing a cover crop? And then in these last couple of years we have gotten a rain, so we've jumped on it. So last year we did a mixture of oat, pea, flax, and oat, flax, radish on all our canola acres, and lo and behold they took, and we actually got pretty nice growth out of them. We didn't do anything on our wheat land, which was unfortunate because it just sat there idle all year, or for the balance of the fall, with only a few volunteer strips. We also seeded barley into an early soybean field that we harvested, and we also put some oats in there beside the barley, some strips to see which grass would do better, both with growth and with frost tolerance, and barley actually seemed to win on both counts. We had some pretty decent frosts, and the barley took it quite well while the oats just withered. So that was interesting to see, because we'd actually been told by a few people that it would be the opposite. One of the questions I always have when we have these cover crops growing in the field is, what's this going to look like next spring? Can you get too much growth? Well, up until last year, we had some really nice, oats that were well tillered, and some decent peas and some decent flax. And when it came to spring and we were seeding, you could barely see that there was anything there at all. So obviously that changes at some point, and that's what we're anticipating this year, because this year we have done the same sort of program on our canola stubble, but on our wheat stubble we put in a mixture of radish, which I know is a bad idea, and we're going to get away from it. Flea beetles decimated most of it. A few did survive, but canary seed was the thing that was the main crop in most of our wheat stubble, and we've got significant growth out of that in a zero-till wheat stubble situation. And I have to say that I am somewhat nervous about that for how the spring is going to be, but we have yet to see how that goes. A couple of other things that we did that, just in the interest of diversity, was a intercrop experiment on 40 acres of soybeans, where we did 10 pounds of flax with non-GMO soybeans beside 40 acres of just straight soybeans. That's another talk. I would not recommend it, but it actually turned out okay. And we also had, on one of our small fields, we had a feed crop of what do we all have in there? Barley and oats and wheat and flax, and peas. This is to feed our massive 6-head hog herd and sell it to some other neighbors who have expressed an interest. But we added a little leftover phosphorus to it. But other than that, we didn't add any nitrogen. We didn't spray it with anything. We did a little pre-emerge Roundup, but after that, we didn't spray it. And to our surprise, it yielded like over 80 bushels an acre using a 48-pound bushel, which was, it was on soybean land, but we just weren't expecting that kind of yield. So that's about all I have. So thanks for your interest.
Thank you. So our next presenter is Brooks White. So Brooks and Jen White, along with their 2 young children, own and operate borderland agriculture in the extreme southwestern corner of Manitoba. They focus on regenerative agriculture by incorporating bison into a highly diverse cropping system. And in 2019, 90% of their annual production included the use of cover crops, companion crops, and intercrops. And in 2018, they were recognized in Canada's Outstanding Young Farmers Program.
My presentation worked, because I didn't make any notes. So yeah, I guess that's enough of an intro. So the Pearson-Lalton area, for those who are familiar with it, is where we farm. Extreme southwest corner, when I say that I mean extreme southwest, so our land borders on North Dakota and some on Saskatchewan. We farm in the wettest part of Manitoba. The driest part of Manitoba. No, it's the wettest part of Manitoba again. So does that sound familiar to anybody? We kind of have this issue with our water cycle. And I think a lot of what we're trying to do on our farm is address what we can control with this water cycle. So 1999 was the year I started farming, and first year back on the farm, as many of you probably remember, on our farm at least, we did not seed a single acre on our farm. We've had 3 more years of that on our farm. And so it was in years later, looking back on some of these photos, and this one really stood out for me. You can see where it's green in the bottom. A live plant is growing, and there's no standing water on the same elevation. So it was showing the effect of a live plant could have on water infiltration. And it was in these years following this, some of these real wet cycles through the mid-late 2000s that we started to experiment with cover crops. And I guess we didn't know they were cover crops or think of the benefits they were having as cover crops. We just were growing them on these fields that were too wet to seed to a cash crop. We were growing them as a emergency feed source for our livestock. And so in an attempt to try to feed our animals, we kind of stumbled in years later of seeing the benefits that these cover crops were having on the soil. And how in the years following, those wettest fields we had turned into the first fields we could get on. And we could see it was all to do with our water infiltration rates. Now, zero-till had been a part of the farm since the early 1980s. And Dad was really a leader in moving to no-till, but it wasn't enough. And we knew we had to make some changes to the farm. We had to create a new view on the way we looked at agriculture. And we really had to step back, look at all these little pieces that we were kind of stumbling on and try to figure out how they all really fit together and what that puzzle was going to look like. And we had to take that degenerative model that had happened for so long. My dad really did move along and turn it into a sustainable farm. We needed to take it to the next level and to try to figure out how we were going to regenerate that soil and put it to work for us. And so, after 3 years of extreme dry weather, and the very first rainfall event we had this spring on June 8th, and I was driving home that night, if this video will work, we had over an inch of rain in 15 minutes. This is our first rainfall event for the spring, coming off of a dry year prior. And you can see all the water on this field on the headland. Yet out in the distance, off of the 100 feet headland, there's no water laying in the field. And it just hit home of what was happening in the field. I'm trying to step back and observe what was happening. And it's purely a headland issue that we all deal with. And it's just showing there's no water infiltration happening here. So we knew there was a problem on the headland. All the water that came from that 1 inch rain, and the rest of the field was absorbed. But that headland, it all ran off and went into this one low spot in the field. And it sat there, and that has had water in it since June 8th, and it's been growing, because all the water keeps running off of that headland. So that's one of the target areas we had on our farm this year.
What can we do with areas like that? We don't need to necessarily seed that entire field to a cover crop, but why not seed that headland? And take the headland out of production from what's happening with the rest of the field and put it into a cover crop and try to alleviate that issue of water infiltration and compaction. After that same rainfall event, another mile up the road, another field where we had made a change last year. One change was putting a cover crop in the ground after harvest, so after rye harvest. On the bottom, there's no water laying in the field, and the other two fields, all three pictures were taken from the same spot on the road. When I looked around, it's all the same waterway going across three fields.
Does that one work? There. So on the bottom, there's no water laying in the field, and on the top two, there's water laying there. The only difference on all three of these no-till fields was that we had included a cover crop last fall after rye harvest, and then this spring, we allowed that cover crop, which had rye in it, to grow all spring before we seeded into it, to the point where it was right before heading. And after that first rainfall event, that 1 year making a change had improved the water infiltration and captured that water. Now, how we're using cover crops on our farm is really specific to our needs in our grazing program. And because we operate a mixed grain farm, so we're about 7,000 acres total on our farm, 5,000 is annual production, but we have 2,000 acres of perennials as well. We're working the perennials through different areas of the farm. We're grazing all year round with our bison, so we're not feeding them in the winter. We're trying to graze them as much as we can through the year. These cover crops play a really important role for us in our grazing plans. So we sit down and make a grazing plan, and any time through the year where we need to fill a gap in our grazing plan, we can utilize a cover crop. And so, for example, this year where we had a real dry season and our perennials were not regrowing, we needed to allow adequate rest for our perennials. And if we went back in too early this year, we weren't going to provide the adequate rest those perennials needed, so we could pull out of the perennials and we could jump into a cover crop to try to preserve the life of those perennials until they had proper time to recover. So sitting down and having a plan, having cover crop fields designated for that purpose, we can pull it in the summer. If our perennials are recovering fast enough, we can go into those cover crops in the fall or winter months instead. And one, for example, here, we didn't use it all 2 years, but we carried it right through the winter and grazed the following spring. And we're including quite often biannuals or even perennials in these mixes, so we have something there to start growing again next spring right away. And we're using these as a way to jumpstart some of these fields. We're transitioning from conventional high input fields into lower input regenerative field. And so taking a field, no-till, that been conventionally farmed, seeding to a full season cover, grazing it intensively with the bison in an effort to get as much of that back into the soil as we can and try to jumpstart the biology. And it's amazing how fast we can really see the improvements that can happen from this. And after even 1 year of making a change, we see the insects starting to come back, and we see the nutrients cycling fast, and the grass going right back to the manure and breaking that down. And seeing the soil structure improve where we can get that water infiltration that we need. And digging in there and finding, upwards of 7 earthworms in every spadeful. Yet we walk across the field to a monocrop canola field, and the dirt just falls apart in our hands. And I say dirt compared to this soil, because that's really what it ultimately was. There was no soil structure at all, it just fell apart. And that's after making only 1 year change with a full season cover crop. To the point where you can see the earthworms channeling all the way down into the subsoil. And some of the examples with water infiltration that we've seen as this picture was taken, we had 1.5 inches of rain that night, and first thing in the morning, because that live cover crop's growing, we can go out there and we can be seeding. And that's just a picture of that same field. It was seeded into an existing cover crop, so it was a double cover crop, if that makes sense. And we come back later in the fall and we graze that off. And sometimes we graze early enough, like in July, we'll get a regrowth out of those cover crops if we include the right species. And always trying to leave enough residue in these cover crops, we're not taking everything. And we've really learned, I really like this was saying, but you can't throw on cover crops and expect miracles because there's a lot to put into it and think about how to make it part of your system and what's going to work for you. And there's no one recipe out there. One of the ways we're doing it is what we call our field art, and taking 160-acre fields and splitting them up and seeding them into strips, and then grazing with the bison. So the bison are getting 4 acres at a time in here, and they're getting 2 acres of a full season cover crop and 2 acres of a corn hairy veg mix. And we're moving them along through this. So it gives the animals a diverse diet. So not only we're trying to address the issues in our soil, but also address how to get the maximum performance out of our animals. And these animals were able to get to a finishing weight grazing in a field like this and ship them straight to market. And then next year we'll alternate that field and we'll swap cover crop and corn veg. And we really have an advantage with us. We call it the bison advantage that we're using, because these guys really are natural winter grazers and they'll dig through the snow, no problem. And I think we need to look at cover crops maybe in a way that Scott's going to get into more with relays and companions and how we can get things started earlier in the season rather than trying to just focus on seeding them after a cash crop. Sunflowers and clover. This has a 9-species mix in between our sunflower rows, and corn and hairy veg, I'm sure he'll probably touch on as well. It works really well for us. I will wrap it up there. We've seen some really vast improvements in, in our on-farm trials and our soil Urundi's challenge. The most microbial activity we found in our soil Urundi's challenges after cover crops. Best water infiltration we've seen is after cover crops. And we've seen fields of corn where after a number of years of cover cropping, we add fertilizer back into our system and we've lost yield in corn instead of gaining yield. So I'll leave it at that. Move on.
The third farmer in the panel is Gardiner. He has a mixed grain and cattle farm at Clearwater. He started cover cropping about 10 years ago and has been practicing regenerative agriculture for the past 2 years.
Hello everybody, my name is Joe Gardiner. I farm with my parents, Keith and Jolene Gardiner. On our farm we manage 19 quarters of land. 1,600 of that is arable acres that we used to crop year after year. Now, as I'm going to explain, we're doing a few different things. And we have 250 beef cattle. These are just the principles of regenerative ag. We've touched on a lot of them, but this is kind of what they talk about, the mindset change. These are the things we think about in regenerative ag when we get up in the morning, and that is plant diversity. I have a list of crops that we grow on our farm that I'm going to get to. Living root in the ground year-round, obviously livestock integration, reduced or no-till, and reduced synthetics. In the background, that is what Brooks was talking about. They do with the bison. I got the idea from Brooks. That's corn and hairy veg. We use that for either grazing the whole plant, or we combine the corn, and the veg stays as a protein source, and the corn stover is used as the energy. Makes excellent winter feed for livestock. This is kind of, if anybody's been to a soil health presentation, you've probably seen this. The title's cut off, but this is net farm income for Stats Canada data for 100 years of Canadian production. The blue is the our gross productivity, and the green is our net farm income. Whoops. You do not have to be a rocket scientist to see that that system is not only doomed to fail, but it's coming quickly. By far, this is what stands out for me the most, whereas we're a smaller farm, like a lot of farms, we carry a large debt load. I'm going to be one of the first ones bucked off if we hadn't changed. And I mean, a year like 2019, I'm glad we made the changes we did when we did, because, I mean, 2019 hurts like hell and continues to hurt like hell, but at least we're, in my opinion, heading on the right path. So it's the history, that's my parents. Yeah, they started into holistic management when it came through. I believe Blaine Jurgis down here in the front was one of their mentors, which is, we've come full circle because I'm involved with the General Mills Regenerative Ag program, and Blaine is now a mentor of mine. The first cover crop, I couldn't remember exactly. It was 2011, 12, or 13. But anyway, it was a massive, massive success. I went out after a fall rye crop before I'd ever heard of soil health. I just wanted to put some seeds in the ground and see if we could get a viable forage for cattle, and it was spectacular. And we continued to do fall seed cover crops, trying to get similar results. Spoiler alert, other than the first year we tried it, basically we weren't getting very good results at all. It was always either a factor of not enough sunlight, not enough moisture, and if you're a plant, that is a bad, bad combination. So in 2017, we started incorporating forages and intercrops into our rotation, and in 2018, we are full on regenerative. So these are cash crops. I put cash in quotations because if you're growing crops, you should make money on all of them, whether that's they go back to the soil and improve resilience. But these are the crops that we sell to make money. So you can see millet, soybeans, peas, forage peas, oats, buckwheat, fall rye, canola, and then we're actually doing a number of grasses this year and corn, like I mentioned. So these are the cover crops that we grow, that we try and incorporate. Basically, I separated up the black is cool season, the red is warm season, but it's just trying to get that diversity of plant species. This is us mixing up the picture is us mixing up a 15-way mix, our full season cover. Not pictured is my dad and I about to kill each other. Because it's as disorganized as it looks, absolutely. But what I should say about cover crops, I should touch on again. If you're just getting into cover cropping or soil health, and you got, I would suggest highly that if you were going to start, pull some seed out of your bin, sow it. Don't necessarily get hung up on the warm season, cool season, because 8 years out of 10, you're going to get nothing. So you might as well not spend money on the seed. So we're moving away this year. I think we sold 40 acres of fall seed covers. It was mostly a radish blend that the food deals took it all. But basically, our focus now is relay cropping and intercropping with perennials. So we get that head start in season. So when our cash crop is off, that we can. We've already got a running start. So this is the opportunities that I see with regenerative ag. Obviously, carbon sequestration, the soil resiliency obviously comes with it. Reliable feed source. If we're growing more plants and we have an end use, which is our livestock, the more plants we can grow, the more forage that we have. Obviously, reduced inputs, the intercrop synergy. I won't get into too much. I have one more of these presentations to go through. Reduced financial stress. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Soon, hopefully. And obviously, newer opportunities, new passion. 2019 sucked. It was a brutal, brutal farming year, but it really is. What's the saying? You want to make it small changes, change the way you do things. You want to make big changes, change the way you see things. That is truly, and I'm going to steal this from Gabe Brown. Gabe always said, I used to get up conventionally farming and think, what can I kill? Is it a pest? Is it a fungus? Is it a weed? Whereas now the focus is, how can I incorporate more life on my farm, more resiliency, and you're going to be, better suited to grow healthier plants. Challenges, obviously, whoops, shit, there we go. The weeds is definitely an issue. It depends on your perception of weeds. I like to tell people weeds is just the soil expressing itself with the seeds that it knows it's going to repair itself more quickly. My neighbors don't think of it that way, and it does kind of suck, but it's just one of the things we have to live with. Not enough research, which I think we've hammered home. Definitely management intense, without a doubt. And equipment. Things like seed separation and drills and whatnot. The new ideas that we're doing on the farm, water infiltration, I would say is the easiest thing you can do on your farm to gauge how healthy or how resilient your soil is. If you can infiltrate water, it means you have pore space. If you have pore space, it means you have a home for biology. You can store water. For anybody who's interested, that is a 7-inch tube from an old auger, and I welded handles on, and I hammered it in the ground and calculate an inch of water. It is invaluable. That thing I have used most spring. I'm out in every single field, and it's very, very, very interesting. We do melted urea. If somebody's heard of it or wants to know more information, I won't talk about it now, but you can chat with me about it. Obviously, we're intercropping. We started using crystal green phos, which is a non-water soluble phos, not 1152, which, in my personal opinion, is completely useless now. We use folic acid or humic acid. Trying our best to reduce glyphosate, but I'm finding that's harder than quitting smoking, which I'm also not good at. We don't use any fungicide at all, and zero pesticide. And that's the first for the last two. That's the first year we've done that, but if we're trying to increase the fungal biomass in our soils, it's really, really hard to do if you're spraying fungicide 3 times a year. I'll just go through this quickly on infiltration rates, if you're not familiar with it. So the tilled canola stubble, this is exactly what I found in my research with water infiltration. 1 inch is an hour. I'm sure to a lot of people that haven't done infiltration rates, that is alarming. The second inch was between 12 and 16 hours. I had to go to bed before the water went away. And then this is some of my pride and joy, the full season cover. You can just see the difference, 2 inches in 35 minutes. The perennial relay, which is just a cereal underseeded with legume, is 38 minutes. And then the most interesting, the corn vetch. I think it has a lot to do with balancing the carbon and nitrogen and creating pore space, but it was the best, 2 inches of water in 22 minutes. These are our intercrops, peas, canola, beans, millet. That's a photo of the beans and millet. For organic producers out there, if you haven't heard of this, I think there's lots of opportunity with beans and millet for organic production. The oats vetch, that's what I'm going to get to next, and then obviously the corn vetch. If you're grazing corn or combining corn and have cows, vetch works so good. It's glyphosate resistant. You can have clean fields and high protein, palatable biomass. It makes so much sense if you have livestock. These are just the influencers that I made a list in case people were interested. But I'm going to go through one more thing. Do the other presentation? I'll go through it quick. So James, who was talking earlier about getting a community together, presented me with this idea, growing vetch at a higher rate with oats in an attempt to reduce input costs and also have a decent oat yield, but also have a viable feed source, which is the oat vetch straw to feed the cows. So I'll just buzz through this quick. Oat vetch, this is the idea. So oats underseeded to vetch and perennial ryegrass I added as well. An attempt to reduce costs, provide viable feed source, like I said, keep a living root, grazing, and I don't have notes, so I'm not sure what the last one is. This is the crop. We used a pre-seed herbicide, not glyphosate, because I was done with glyphosate, but I'm finding that's really hard to do. So we sowed 55 pounds of oats, 12 pounds of vetch, 5 pounds of perennial ryegrass, and we did 30 pounds of N, and then we did trials of 60, 45, and 0. So observation, we had good rain early in the spring, the vetch was incredibly slow, the oats jumped ahead. There was some millet wild oat pressure. I think next year we will up our seeding rate to probably 90 pounds of oats and try and get some more early competition. The vetch reached the top of the oat canopy in August when the oats were starting to turn, which I think worked out pretty good timing-wise, and the vetch needs moisture. The reason I included this photo is because on one side of the flag, there's 0 nitrogen, and the other side there's 30 pounds. But kind of what I wanted to show is you cannot tell which is which. Small amount of photosynthesizing vetch that was low in the canopy seemed to to provide adequate enough nitrogen for the oats. And this is what I mean. So vetch is, for those people that haven't done anything with vetch is it's an opportunist for sunlight. It eventually does head up the oat canopy once the oats have matured and set seed. But for the time being, they just hang out low in the canopy, gathering up any bit of sunlight that they can. And obviously, they're one of the best nitrogen fixators that we have. So at this point, they are of no competition to the oats. They're just providing nitrogen to the system. They're not stealing sunlight or many nutrients from the oats. A little bit of moisture. So this was about the middle of July, end of July. So this is the start of August. So you can see the purple flowers. The oats are starting to turn. You can see the vetch. And at this point in the experiment, I thought the vetch is going to do nothing. There is no vetch out there enough to make viable feed source. And then it started to rain. Oh, sorry, damn it, I should have practiced. This is just what it looks horizontally. So you can see the perennial ryegrass down there hanging out, capturing sunlight low. The vetch is stretched out to the top of the oat canopy, and these oats are ready to combine. So you kind of see the spectrum of how the sunlight is used with these three crops. And then it started to rain. And this is what it turned into, the vetch just took off unbelievably. And I know what everyone's thinking, because what everyone asks is, how the hell do you combine that? Yeah, it was wild. Oof, look at that. I tell people you need two things: patience and cannabis. No, but it actually, to be honest, I wouldn't want to go into that with a rotary combine, but it combined excellent. We had a little bit of problems with the vetch catching on the side of the header, but as long as you figure out which direction the vetch is laying, you go that direction and the opposite, and it went through just super. Like, we put that through with a 30-foot header on a 9600 at 3 miles an hour. It was just like doing monocrop oats. So that's what the bales looked like. That was a vetch spot that I went through with the baler, and it's such a vine. Picked everything up. So that was October 9th. That's October 10th. We only got 30 acres done out of a quarter section. But something interesting, that we had so much snow, we couldn't get access our haystacks, so what we had was oat vetch, and these are the heifers grazing. So you can see that that's the feed that's available. And I sent away feed samples hoping that they'd be back in time for this, but I'm going to take a ballpark and say that's somewhere between 100 and 120 relative feed value feed. The cows cleaned it up totally, and they're the best estimators of how quality the feed is, and that was gone. So this is I just scratched this down a while ago. I'm hoping to update it this winter. But the idea is monocrop oats, if you're getting 125 bushels at $3, your gross revenue is $375. With the oat vetch, if you have the livestock to add value, I lowered the oat rates down to 100 bushels, which is roughly what we were getting on the stuff before the snowfall. We're definitely getting 3,000 pounds of forage at 7 cents, which I don't know where you're finding 7-cent hay these days, but you can add an extra $200 an acre while reducing costs is kind of the idea. And you've got more gross revenue to play with and hopefully less risk. I think that's it. So yeah, I guess we will answer questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a few set questions, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. So for the panel, I think we've basically covered this, but just in case there's something to add, is there a specific reason why you're adding cover crops in your rotation, like a specific problem, or is it kind of just the general soil health benefits?
Yeah, I think for us it is general soil health benefits. I just love the idea of harvesting sunshine for as much of the crop year as we can, and putting carbon in the soil and adding diversity. And yeah, I can't say that we're really seeing huge problems that we're trying to address, but we're trying to be proactive and yeah, get things healthier.
Yeah, I mean, for us, yes, there's always a goal. I guess, and water infiltration was always number one, but I guess it depends on the field, and if it's a field we need for forage, or if it's otherwise a specific field that we are targeting an issue with, where it be those headland areas or the saline areas, because you need to think about that, because different species are going to address those issues differently, I guess, in different parts of the field. So I guess the answer is both for us.
I would say ours is probably more monetary. 250 cows, eat 40 pounds a day, at 8 cents a pound. That's every single day. It costs us $800 to feed our livestock. If we can produce more forage, create the mixes that are going to benefit the soil, it just seemed like a win-win-win. Why wouldn't we be trying to produce as much forage as possible? We create more dollars per acre on land that we're paying for. So it just seemed to make sense, obviously from soil health benefit, but from a financial standpoint as well.
So the next question for the panel is if you could tell us the most common cover crops you're using on your farm, and if there's any species you're looking forward to trying.
We are, as I said, all of our canola stubble is seeded to pea oat currently. I think the dream is that we're hoping to fix a little bit of nitrogen for next year's cereal crop in that situation, but that is probably a dream. I doubt that it's happening, but we're very interested in using cool season cover crops that are actually going to grow because of how late we're seeding them. And we tried the canary seed thing this year because it was cheap and it was something different. And we have been avoiding rye for the reason I stated in the question before, just out of a fear of managing that in the spring because of moisture issues. But going into winter the way we are now, I think I might wish that we had some in there. So maybe next year I'll wish that we had used rye as well.
I don't know how to answer that question of what species we use the most. We've tried a lot of different ones, and maybe the best answer would be whatever's the cheapest at the time and makes the most sense. We try to grow as much of our cover crop seed as we can on our farm, so it might depend on what we were able to grow. Probably hairy vetch would be the number one. That we grow it. It's been relatively easy for us to grow, and we can use it in a lot of different ways. We really found a lot of ways to use it, and rye as well. Oats I like to include almost all the time. I really like the way oats work in the soil, and livestock always love them, so we use them as much as we can. We're always trying to add something new every year. We're trying something different and trying to figure out what we've been missing in our system and what might work for us, I guess. So just always experimenting.
My answer is much the same as Brooks. Basically, the two big ones on our place is fall rye and vetch. Vetch because it's so palatable, so versatile. The livestock love it, and the rye because so many people are growing it now. It's becoming the price is going up. So I just think of it as an insurance policy. It's so winter hardy, and over winters, if you got bare ground, I just throw rye in the ground. Next spring, if I need to terminate it too dry, but it just gives you options. We can graze it, we can use it as a forage option, or if, like this spring, rye was worth $7, we just sprinkle, 50 or 60 pounds of N on, and it's probably one of our best cash crops. So, yeah, fall rye and hairy vetch are the big ones for me.
Just to add to that as well, like if you think about these cover crops, we try to add a few species in there that will overwinter. Like right now, we're looking at a pretty risky spring, whether we're going to be able to seed all the farm or not. At least those acres that we had in the cover crop, we included up to 5 species that should overwinter. Maybe they won't all, but at least something's going to be there growing in the spring. If we can't seed cash crop, at least we've got 5 other species growing there that we can graze off, or at least they're growing using moisture and doing good things in the soil instead of leaving it bare.
So where in your rotation do you use cover crops? I know that there's probably a variety of answers for each farm. And how are you growing them? So some people might grow as in strips throughout the whole field, just in the fall, or throughout the whole year.
Yeah, we're only growing them in fall, and I gave a couple of examples there of trying to get it growing in crop, and I think I'd like to try to experiment with that more as well. But yeah, it's always a matter of what is that thing, and if we're going to need a herbicide, what's going to be able to tolerate that, and yeah, it remains a search. But yeah, so far it's been fall only for us since we don't have the livestock.
Yeah, it's all of the above, I guess, that we've tried or experimented. We really do struggle with getting them seeded post-harvest, meaning we chase the combine, but moisture is always a problem at that time. You gotta be really lucky to get a rain timely enough to get it up and going. Our window is just so small, so we're really trying to focus on trying to do everything in one pass on the farm, and whatever we can include as a companion in spring seeding. And there's a lot of different options and ideas out there, and I think that's really the future for us, I guess, is trying to grow multiple things at the same time in one pass. As far as strips, yeah, I showed you the strips. That's a new thing we're trying this year in strips. Otherwise, it's been target areas or an entire field, I guess.
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, we're much the same as Brooks as well. We have had not very good luck with fall seeded covers, and it just seems like when you got livestock, there's a million things going on that time of year. So yeah, our focus has been we're trying to add more perennials into our cropping rotation in order to, well, it gives us more options from a forage standpoint, but I think perennials are paramount to storing carbon in the soil. They work well with underseeded to an annual to get it a head start. So yeah, we're doing more work with more experimenting with getting different perennials down. I will say it opens up a different can of worms. Trying to terminate perennials, especially when you're trying to use less glyphosate. So I don't know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So.
So what sort of advice do you have for farmers just wanting to try cover crops for the first time?
It takes some planning. I think in our context of doing this in the fall, and moisture is always the question, and so we've had several years here now where it's been dry, and the EOR in you says it's probably not going to rain, it's probably useless to get any plant together because it's not going to work anyway, and then it does, and then you scramble. So it would be, I think what we'll do in the future is just have something ready, and if we use it, we use it. If we don't, we carry it over to the next year. But it's just, yeah, that whole scrambling, if you do get the rain, to try to do something last minute is tough.
My advice would be, if you don't have livestock, figure out a way to get them. Maybe you don't want to own them, you don't want to raise them, but you probably could find a cowboy that really needs some grazing, and they don't necessarily know where to go. People need to try to find each other, and there's so many opportunities to do some custom grazing or something like that. You might just have to build a quick fence around it, but it turns that cover crop into cash revenue. And even if it's only a break even, if you can only get enough grazing to pay for the seed, at least you've done something good for the soil, and you broke even, and it lowers your risk. And I think livestock for us have shown on our land where they have added so much value that they're so integral. I really think we need to find more ways to partner with each other, and I mean, we can move cows on trucks, so I think there's got to be opportunities to do that stuff.
The advice that I give to most people when it's brought up to me, because a lot of people talk to the seed companies and whatnot, and Facilia is a buzzword, and it's $5 a pound. But my advice is just go out and sow fall rye. If it's October 15th, just get it in the ground. It's something's growing. Yes, you don't get the diversity. You know, you got to kill it in the spring. But how many conventional acres or organic acres? How many of them does a seed go in the ground without a glyphosate pass or a tillage pass? Like, you're going to find a way to terminate the rye. Worst case, all you did was you cycle nutrients into the spring, and you're going to terminate them anyway. You're going to get the allelopathic benefits from the rye to kill any other weed pressure, as long as you get a good kill on the rye in the spring. Or if you have a spring like we're probably going to have next year, at least you have something growing. If you put oats in the ground and they grow this high, well, they're going to winter kill. If it's wet, a wet fall like this, you get oats or rye in the ground, and it's worth $6 a bushel. Find me a canola budget that's going to do, you know, canola sowed on the 1st of June that's going to do what that rye crop's going to do. So that's my advice: is if you're just looking at trying, go throw some rye in the drill and go do it after harvest.
Has anybody picked up rye? Joe has rye seed for sale.
So I'll come down and if the audience has questions, this is a great time to ask 3 farmers that have some experience.
What is your rate of cannabis breaker?
A lot. No, the oat batch, every single person that drove by, you get to, I mean, it rained. We were getting 1.5 inches every week, and every time you drove by, it was greener and greener and greener. And I thought it was going to be a mess. It really, really wasn't that bad. With that being said, I would shy away from rotary combine. The conventional were excellent, though.
Joe, you had a picture of your hand with oats and vetch seed together. Was that off the combine? And if so, how did you separate?
That was actually seeding, Scott, but with the late harvest and the late rain that we've had, there is actually more vetch in the oats than I anticipated. A lot of it is not mature, and we're getting some pods and whatnot. We may try and do, when we're getting oat seed cleaned, we may try when we're doing the process anyway to clean out vetch. But kind of the idea is next year, because we underseed it to perennial ryegrass as well. The vetch overwinters, the perennial ryegrass overwinters, and we have an option of forage, or we can take the perennial ryegrass and the vetch right to harvest. Hopefully the timing lines up, and harvest as a cash crop and separate them.
You had on one of your slides, you had talked about melted urea. Can you explain what that is?
Kind of. So, melted urea, you mix it with water, and I've got my nitrogen guy sitting right there. He probably doesn't want to explain it. Anyway, what you do is you skip the nitrate phase of urea. Urea, when you put it in the ground, I'm going to butcher this, but it has to turn into bacteria turns it into nitrate, and an enzyme turns it into NO4, whatever, usable to the plant. What melted urea does is you skip the nitrate phase, we blend it with folic acid, and it can actually we fan it on the plant. And the selling line is 90% of the nitrogen is absorbed within the first 24 hours. Whereas if you do research on applying nitrogen and the processes that have to happen in the soil, it is not put down 90 pounds and you get 85 pounds out. There's so many factors at play. So I think it's the most efficient way to apply nitrogen. Well, we did have with that being said, we did have a little bit of leaf burn. It's because I did 2 passes too close together. But yeah, essentially we did 15 pounds an acre of nitrogen. And the calculation we like to do is that is like throwing 30 pounds of N in the soil, just because it absorbs it and it's so efficient. So there's not actually a pile of research out there. I got it from a guy that I met just at a meeting like this. but we had some interesting results. One thing I will say is, I thought when I got the regenerative ag, I was going to sell the sprayer, but I just lived in the damn thing all summer, putting on nitrogen. So,
We also employed this strategy this summer and left numerous test strips, and our results were less than stellar. So I don't know. When it was sold to me, the idea, it was like, you got to do this. It's awesome. This works fantastic, and we didn't have that experience. So just maybe start small.
Do either of you have experience in, this is a lot of plant diversity, but species grazing diversity?
like
Besides bison or besides
Right now, no, just bison, but yes, want more livestock diversity. We've been this close to custom grazing cattle a couple times, but tons more opportunity out there. And I look at it as, if we can find somebody new that wants to come into the farm and wants an opportunity to have their own piece of the farm, their own equity, build their own farm within our farm, bring another species in, and we can use on the same acres and get more revenue that way.
I had 6 pigs this year. I'm hoping to double next year.
You sold it.
No, just identical producers, big producers.
Brooke was saying something about the corn and adding nitrogen back into it. I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. Could you maybe just say what your normal fertility is on most cash crops?
We have been for 3 years now into reducing as much as possible. We've cut out phosphate on almost everything on the farm, reduced our nitrogen on all of our intercrops to nothing. But we've been experimenting along the way and learning sometimes that's a mistake, and we need to go a little slower. Using the cover crops in a full season cover is one way we can jumpstart it, and we can move faster is what we're finding. And as opposed to just a traditional cash crop and shut the switch off isn't really working. Now, that exact example I showed was 15 years of cover cropping in not every year, but it's had that much history of some type of a cover crop and grazing every year. In that case with the corn, we did show that where we used fertilizer in the corn, we lost yield. We tried to replicate that again this year. We haven't got any corn off yet to know if that happened again this year, but we haven't seen visual differences yet. We can drive down the field and across the road, and you can't pick out those spots where we shut it off, where we used cover crops and where we used livestock. Now, we did the same trials, the same strips in areas of the field where we would take cash crops off, and you can pick it out all year long. And so it just shows the importance to me of how fast we can do it if we use all of these steps and not just one.
What advice would you have if you are trying not to do any tilling for rough pastures, hayland, or do you just bite the bullet and till it up 1 year?
A neighbor of mine wanted to, he asked me for some advice this year. He wanted to rejuvenate hay ground without terminating it, like without herbicide or tillage. Fortunately, I just come from Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, Ray Archuleta's course here in Brandon, and they recommended diversity. You have stored carbon. What you need is to release some of that carbon, say with nitrogen, but plant diversity. So the strategy we went with was oat vetch into the hay or pasture stand. They're going to take it as hay, which is a little counterproductive, but they still need the hay, and then go in with a warm season mix next summer. And hopefully that rejuvenates the stand. Who knows? It might work. Depends on the year, I think.
Were you referring more to the to rejuvenating it back, like we were talking about earlier, Sheila, or or the rough standing, like the rough dealing with mole hills and things like
Oh, quite rough too, like you have a really rough field like that.
that. Yeah, so we've been blessed that most of our fields have never gotten very rough for whatever reason. We have some land we bought several years ago though that was very rough, and we have had, don't get me wrong, we've had very rough land, but we've never tilled it, and it's amazing how smooth it is after a few years of going back to annual crop production. And I don't know if having the livestock in and just for hooves has an effect, that it's leveling things out while plants are growing. Like Amber's over there, and she could probably testify to what I'm saying, that we have fields we did not touch, just went in and started seeding it to annual production, keeping the animals in there, and it's amazing how smooth they are. You can drive a truck across them at full speed again. Her dad still doesn't believe me because he wants to do the same thing, but he says, no, we gotta work it up, we gotta work it up to level, but we haven't seen where we have to do it.
I'm going to add a little bit to that if I can. So I've seen this on a few thousand acres where the Conservation Reserve Program, it was basically abandoned land that the government paid to be, you know, whatever, and it gets really rough. So we've had a lot of issues with it being really rough. And some guys will go in there and do serious hardcore tillage on that. But like I said, I have 6 growers. And what we've done is they've used the disc, the offset disc, but they set the depth at the yard on the road. So that it just sits right where the tires will run, and it just knocks the tops of those hills down. So you're not doing full-on tillage and turning that soil and ripping all of that up, but you're just knocking those edges down, and then they'll either hit it once, maybe twice. It just kind of depends on the field, how rough it was, how well it breaks up, what your moisture content is at that time. And sometimes they'll even come back with a roller or something like that. And you can make it really flat in 1 to 2 passes, like livable. Because we've done this before, we're like, yeah, it'll get better. It does get better, but you need a new back, a new spine in the meantime, because they can be overly rough. So there's an in-between, between doing nothing and doing all. That's what I'm getting at.
There's some land rollers out there that have levelers on them, which is basically a blade that just rides on top of the soil surface too, and it'll move it. You can actually break up Belmar cedars, so you're seeding, spreading the molehills, and rolling at the same time. They're available, and if they're out there, I'm sure we can find places to rent them, things like that too. Are you ever referring to things like, I know you have bison, the big wallows? Do you have those big holes where they've been wallowing and rolling? Okay. Because of big walls and things, I would say bale grazing, setting bales in them, letting the hay fill up in those big holes.
This one's for you, Jill, that millet bean mixture. I've never ever heard that one before. So what type of rates, and is it red Prozo that you're using for a millet?
Well, there was a millet shortage at one point this year. The only stuff I could get was Japanese millet. It cannot handle snow, I found. But it's actually a funny story. My grandpa, he passed away last year, but he always said, son, if you're gonna play baseball, you're gonna grow baseball crops. And because the idea was 30-inch spacing on the beans, and I went and solid seeded just with a hoe drill, the millet in, and then I was going to do one last herbicide pass right before the millet was out of the ground, and then just leave it. The sad fact of the matter was July 1st is Clearwater's big ball tournament. I should have been spraying that morning. I went and played baseball. So when I came back, I went out with glyphosate and tried to spot spray. Where I sprayed, I killed most of the millet. Where I didn't spray, you know, the wild millet was already up, and we had some pigweed coming. I tried a few things herbicide-wise that definitely damaged the soybean yield, but I can see that there is some real potential there. Like as far as timing worked out, the millet and the soybeans matured about the same. From a sunlight perspective, which is really what we were trying to manipulate, it worked excellent. The soybeans podded their main large pods on the bottom before the millet took over the canopy. And then of course, once the millet took over, it was basically just like a millet crop. The problem was with this year, the snow took the heads of the Japanese millet and laid them right on the ground. And I'm sure we had 75% millet loss just because of the snow. So I am looking forward to trying again next year, and there were definitely some kinks. The millet will get sowed with a disc drill, so there's less disturbance, because I think that in my check strip was a lot cleaner than the rest of the field. I think just the disturbance of the hoe drill germinated the red root pigweed in the millet. And as far as separation and timing goes, like they seem like a very good match too. So it'll be something I'll be trying in the future.
Are there any other questions from the audience?